So now the question becomes, how do you grow a podcast that attracts, nurtures, and turns listeners into clients on a consistent basis? And how can you make sure that you're not yet another unprofitable podcaster who suck years into their show to barely grow and make an ROI? Because that is the majority of podcasts out there. Spend 2-3 years into a show, produce incredible content, but they still don't grow, they still don't monetize, and they definitely don't attract dream clients to their business on a consistent basis. So I want to make this very clear. There is a right way to do it and there's a wrong way to do it. People think you just launch a podcast as an entrepreneur and expert, you talk on a mic, and then magically your audience will appear and you make a ton of money. I bloody wish that was the case. Well, it would be so much easier. But I know after interviewing and coaching 350 plus podcasters, it's not the case. You have to be very intentional about the steps you're taking in order to make this thing a reality. It doesn't happen by guesswork and by hoping that, just talking to a mic. It happens again by intentional actions you're taking to reach these goals. And my goal here is to help you avoid those common mistakes and pitfalls that people make when they do launch a podcast. That means that they spend 2-3 years on a show they thought was great, only to be stuck with a slow growth show that no one listens to. And they kind of feel embarrassed because it feels like a failed venture. And it's just, again, a bunch of waste of time. So I don't want that for you. So look, here's how to avoid those mistakes. Guys, you'll have to bear with me. I'm getting super hot. Currently in Malaysia. It is hot as fuck. I'm wearing this and it's way too hot, so I'm gonna have to just take this off quickly. You know what? That feels so much better. Thank God for that. I was just thinking to myself, I'm recording this video, I'm in the flow, but I'm getting very, very hot. Again, the weather here in Malaysia is crazy. It's beautiful. I'm very grateful about that, but I want to make sure I'm in the flow and I'm not getting distracted. Think about how I'm sweating and boiling underneath my shirt. So look, I want to give you 3 simple things to focus on to have not only a fast growing podcast, but a profitable show that does in fact attract dream clients into your business. So number 1, authority positioning. You need to be extremely intentional when you start your podcast by asking yourself the very simple question of, who am I trying to attract to my show? There needs to be clear alignment between what your business offers and the listeners you're trying to attract. A mistake that people often make is they go way too broad and they have a general podcast about, let's say, personal development or business or mental health. And their back end business is actually a lot more focused, a lot more niche. They might have a general personal development podcast. They talk about habits. They talk about business. They talk about morning routines. But in the back end, they have a business, a one-on-one coaching offer where they help executives overcome anxiety in 90 days or less, right? And they just think, if I have a general personal development podcast, then I'm going to attract those listeners. But you don't. You attract a general audience who are going through a bunch of different things, have a bunch of different problems. And even if you build your audience up to, let's say, 1,000 listeners per episode, you could only have maybe, let's say, 20 if you're lucky out of those 1,000 listeners who are specifically executives who suffer with anxiety. So it's really important that you start intentionally by asking, hey, who are the listeners I want to attract to my show? It really needs to be an identity of the ideal client for your business. Once you know exactly who you want to attract to your show, you then have to present the podcast in a way that's wildly attractive to attract those listeners, to turn those strangers into listeners. That means having a show name, a podcast name that's super clear and specific, targeting that listener you want to reach. It means having a podcast description that speaks to the specific pain points of the audience and listener you're trying to attract. And that means having a professional cover art that speaks to that audience. All that to say, not only do you need to know exactly who you're trying to attract to your show, you need to then be able to present your podcast in a way that communicates who it's for, so that when you're promoting on social media or you're being found on Apple and Spotify, when someone sees your cover art and they read your podcast name, they can instantly self-identify and say, oh wow, this podcast is for me. And that is the first step, turning that stranger into a listener. And you do that by having an authority positioning with your podcast, being intentional about who exactly you want to reach and presenting your podcast in the most attractive way possible in order to turn that stranger into a listener of your show. So a prime example of our podcast is called Why Your Podcast Isn't Growing. And we sell a one-on-one coaching program for entrepreneurs and experts who want to grow a podcast that builds their personal brand and attract dream clients to their business. And again, our podcast is literally called Why Your Podcast Isn't Growing for entrepreneurs and experts who want to grow fast and monetize. It's very clear. It's very specific. That means that every single one of our listeners are also our ideal clients. So when we make an offer, we're able to actually convert more of our audience into clients. Now think about what that will be for your podcast. Now, once you have your authority positioning, the next piece is having a targeted content strategy. And what a content strategy means is the specific topics you're covering on the show in order to attract, nurture, and convert your listeners into high-paying clients. The whole goal of your content strategy is for trust building and pre-selling phase, making sure the topic you cover on the show, the entire goal of them is to, again, build deep trust with your audience, share your expertise, show them that you know what you're talking about. You're not just a random guy chatting a bunch of nonsense, but you're talking specifically to their pain points, their desires, to their needs, and demonstrating that you're the expert that can help them solve those specific problems. Now, the most effective formats and frameworks that are proven to work are this, right? Having pain point episodes where you address specific challenges your audience are going through. Having solution episodes where you showcase your unique approach and what makes it different compared to your competitors. And then finally, transformation episodes where you highlight key transformation case studies of past clients you've helped get the results that your audience want to get. When you have the right content strategy, when you're consistently over months, over years, talking about highly relevant topics, the pain points your audience are going through, and explaining how they can solve those pain points and those problems. When you're sharing specific solutions about how you've helped other people do the exact same and overcome the problems your audiences are facing, that is how you're engineering your podcast content to essentially be a client attraction machine for your business. Can you see how by you covering these right content, sharing your expertise, demonstrating you can help your audience get a particular result is going to attract way more of the right audience and is going to pre-sell them and build deep trust with you. The thing to note here is, for this to really, really work, we need to focus more on solo episodes. So prioritizing solo podcast episodes over interview-based shows. Now, interview-based shows are great for building a network, getting another expert's perspective, and also, again, building the brand by showing you talking and engaging with another expert. But the issue is, if you're trying to use your podcast to build your personal brand and attract dream clients to your business, and then you're inviting another guest on who's an expert, where the expert is the one sharing their expertise, their knowledge, their stories, their insights, and helping your audience solve their problems, you're actually positioning and putting a spotlight on the expert, the guest onto your show, which doesn't do a good job of selling you, your services, your expertise, and build the like, know, and trust for your audience to feel like they can trust you to help them with their problems, because they've never heard you demonstrate your expertise to them. You just ask questions and probe, right? So think about what it would do for you if you just prioritize solo episodes, how that would change your relationship with your audience, how that would change the way your audience views you. What do you think would happen when it comes to then you giving a call to action for them to join your program? Compared to if you're doing an interview-based show and then you give them a call to action to join your program when you just had someone else talk for 60 minutes about how great they are and the amazing thing that they've done. And now you're the one saying, hey, by the way, come and work with me. That's what we prioritize short episodes. We've found for our clients, they convert like 3 to 4 times way higher than interview-based shows. We've had multiple clients who launch with the traditional approach of, interview-based podcast. But 2 to 3 years in, they're kind of in a spot where they're not really generating any clients and they're kind of wondering why. And then we give them a format, the solo episodes to follow. And all of a sudden, overnight, literally overnight, they have more people reaching out to them, booking in sales calls, wanting to explore working with them. And again, the reasons are pretty obvious based on what we've just broken down. So that's to show you the power of solo episodes versus just, interview style shows. And then finally, we need to have a conversion bridge. This essentially means you've done the hard work of turning a stranger into a listener. You're attracting the right potential clients for your business through your podcast because you're positioned in the right way. You have that authority feel. And we know that we are now nurturing them. We're building the trust and pre-selling them with a targeted content strategy that focuses on demonstrating your expertise. And solo episodes that shows why you're the person they should work with. The final part is actually turning those listeners into paying clients. You need a conversion bridge. You need a natural path for listeners to become clients. Now, the most effective approach is by giving what we call a value-first lead magnet. So this is something, a resource, a video training, a program, a course that you give away to your audience for free in exchange for their email. It needs to be highly related to the episode and the topic you talk about. So if I'm doing a podcast episode about growing your podcast and why your podcast isn't growing, for us, we had for the longest time a call to action, a lead magnet where we said, hey, if you opt into our lead magnet, it's not called a lead magnet, but if you opted into X, Y, and Z, We will audit your podcast for free and give you a free personalized mini audit of your show and tell you why it's not growing. That was super attractive because it felt personalized, it was high value, and it was highly relevant to our audience, who are entrepreneurs and experts who are struggling to grow their podcast, but want to build a personal brand and attract dream clients to their business. It's a very clear value proposition that just makes sense. So that's the first thing, create a high value lead magnet. The second thing is when people opt in, don't automate the sending. So when someone opts in to the funnel or to accept the lead magnet, don't just send it to them straight away. Reach out to them on a one-on-one basis. And you want to do this because you're essentially trying to start a discovery conversation. This shouldn't be like a high pressure sales, but essentially you want to reach out to them and say, hey, I saw you opted in for this thing. Just want to make sure that is the right thing for you. They say yes, you then send them the thing. And then you ask them, I know you opted in for this, to get an order for your show. Why is it growing? Just to let you know, we work with podcasters on a one-on-one basis, helping them get X results. Here's some case studies. I'm curious to know where you're at with your show and where you're trying to go. I'd love to see how we might be able to help you get the exact same results. Why this works so well is because you're engaging and starting a sales conversation with your listeners straight away. And you're starting it at a point where they have the highest level of interest, when they are the hottest. If you just send automation and never have a human one-on-one, a week goes by and they still haven't heard from you on a one-on-one basis. 2 weeks goes by and their interest diminishes. A month goes by and they've completely forgotten about you. And if you then go and reach out then, it doesn't have the same impact. Whereas when you're the one starting the conversation with them, engaging and then sharing the resource with them on a one-on-one basis, again, you're opening the discovery conversation and you're leading them naturally to book a call to explore working with you. And practically what you might say on your episode is, if you're struggling with specific problems, I've created this specific guide. If you're struggling with slow and steady podcast growth and you're curious to know, well, why is the podcast growing? I'm creating incredible content. I've been doing this for years, but the show still isn't where I want it to be. Well, look, that's exactly why we created our personalized mini audit. Go down to the show note description and apply, and I will send you within 24 hours a mini personalized audit, helping you identify blind spots that's making you suffer with slow and steady growth and giving you specific steps on how you can turn things around right away. That's an example of what I would say in the podcast episode. And again, people will take it on because it's a natural flow. Can you see how if you have the expert positioning and authority feel to your show and you have the right content strategy, love Max want to do that, and you have the right content strategy, and then you give this natural, conversion bridge, you're going to start and engage way more of your audience to take the next step to explore working with you. So like I mentioned, number one, you have the authority positioning for discoverability. Number two, you create a targeted content strategy. Number three, a natural conversion bridge for your audience. This is how clients like Brie 10x her audience. Oh, Brie, don't know why it says oh Brie there, should say Brie. How she was able to 10x her audience and earn $14,400 in 90 days with a podcast, even with a small audience. Her podcast was titled Heartbreak to Wholeness, Untangling the Mindfuck of, Narcissistic Relationship. She had a back-end coaching one-on-one program that she sold for $3,000 to $5,000, and it was helping women who've been through toxic relationships and are trying to heal. So there's a perfect alignment between the listeners of her podcast and her back-end offering of her business. So everyone she attracted in the front end with her podcast would convert easier on the back end for a coaching program. Another example is Carl and John, hosts of the Canadian Wealth Secrets. They added $1 million to their pipeline and grew their podcast to 12,000 monthly downloads following these steps I've mentioned. Their business, their front end, they're attracting a very specific audience, Canadian wealth seekers, Canadians who are looking to build their wealth over the long term. And for them, they have a back-end business and program where they help high net worth individuals in Canada build their wealth through specific tax saving strategies. So again, a perfect alignment between the listeners they're attracting from the front end, their podcast, and how they're able to convert them on the back end with their business offerings. And like I mentioned, for us, our podcast, while your podcast isn't growing, we have a one-on-one program helping entrepreneurs and experts who want to grow a podcast that builds their personal brand and attracts dream clients to their business. On the front end, we're attracting people who are stuck with slow and steady growth, who don't know where to go, don't know what step they need to take. And then on the back end, we're sending a one-on-one personalized program with done-for-you aspects, helping them achieve their final results, helping them get the transformation that they want. So again, there's a perfect alignment between our front end offer, the podcast, and our back-end offering, our one-on-one personalized coaching program. So look, I hope this has gave you some insights in regards to whether or not it's worth you starting the podcast, what ROI you can expect from your show, how to make sure you don't sink in years into the podcast without actually making an ROI. Because again, there is a right way to do this and there's a wrong way to do this. And I hope you can see that there is a massive opportunity here when it comes to podcasting. We are still super early. It really isn't that saturated, right? There are way less competitors in the podcasting space and medium versus any other channel, and it's not even close. So if you can just take the right steps today, right now, get started with your podcast, don't put it off any longer, and you just follow steps intentionally, you will grow an audience you're proud of. You will cut through the noise. You will start building trust at scale with the audience you're building with your show. And you'll start making and attracting dream clients to your business because, again, the podcast is being that driving asset that's able to attract the right listeners, turn them into fans, build that trust through your content, and then convert them in the back end with your business offering. It's really that. So I hope you found this valuable. If you've liked this and got one piece of value from it, be sure to like and subscribe. Look, I make these videos to help you gain clarity around why your podcast isn't growing or monetizing at the rate that you like. And also, if you just looking to start a podcast and want to get started and wondering, is this the right thing for you? That's why I'm making these videos. So again, if that's you, we're constantly helping entrepreneurs and experts who want to build a podcast that builds their personal brand and attracts dream clients to their business, and sharing practical tips and advice and exactly how to do that. So be sure to like and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment down below if you have any questions around how this might specifically work for you and your specific situation.